Well, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you once again to the Sarajevo Film Festival. Regards from Skopje, somebody says. Hi, welcome. And thank you, Sarajevo Film Festival and Cinelink, and of course, Documentary Campus for inviting me once again to do these conversations. My name is Paula Alvarez Vaccaro. I am based in London. I'm a producer and a scriptwriter, and I have the honor and the absolute pleasure to be here with three wonderful producers. Some of them already big idols of mine, and some others that I don't know from before, like Addis, but I know about your work. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to talk about what they have learned during the pandemics. They all have done films during this very, very trying times. They've all have managed to finish those films, and they've all have managed to put them out. So it's a triple feat, I would say, because it's not just handling the production, as we know, which is so challenging, but also finishing the films and making sure that the audiences can see those films, and they've managed to do all of those things. So please welcome Elizabeth Karlsen, producer from Number 9, based in the UK. I don't know if you're in the UK, Elizabeth. How are you?
I am. I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. Yes, I'm in London. Great. Enjoying the summer.
I know. I'm having the summer in my eye, and it goes and it comes back depending on the clouds. So apologies.
Briefly comes back.
Exactly. And Ada Salomon, welcome Ada from On Location. Ada, you're frozen maybe, or you're muted.
She's muted, I think.
Okay. Maybe she needs to get herself to a place, because I think she's also frozen. So Addis, I'm going to you while Ada comes back in with the hands of technology. Welcome. How are you? Where are you today?
Well, I'm in Sarajevo, obviously. And
wonderful.
It's sweltering heat, but I'm in my office and nice air conditioning, so it's all good.
Good. Yeah. All right, and I think we have Ada. Yes. There she is. Ada, I think you're muted. That was the phrase of 2020. That's still the phrase of 2021. You're muted.
Very good. I'm so sorry. That's sorry. Okay. Everything went so well all the morning and now the connection went away.
Where are you, Ada? I know you're shooting right now. I'm stopping, Ada.
Yeah. We are shooting a very nice teenager film, German teenager film in the heart of Transylvania, in the southwestern part of Romania, in Hunedoara.
Wonderful. And Ada, good that I have you now. I'm going to start with you because I fear that you're going to be dropped out again. So I'm going to ask you, I know that you managed during the pandemics not only to shoot Bad Luck or Loony Porn, that you put out there, and also at the Berlinale and got your award. So there was the filming and the releasing, everything done during the pandemic. But I also know that in Romania you managed to create a framework for working in the pandemics that didn't exist in the country before, and that was done thanks to all the involvement of the industry, of the Romanian producers. Can you tell us a bit more about how the industry worked around these protocols, and how did you manage to shoot your pandemic film, let's call it, at the moment?
Yeah, actually we shot 2 films during during 2020, but Bad Luck Banging was the first one. And what we did the moment that the lockdown started, we put ourselves together in a kind of solidarity that we never saw before in our sector. I won't call it industry, because it was the whole the art house and the industry and everyone putting our efforts together, especially the producers, and starting to inform ourselves and to see what we can grab, because it was an effort that wasn't only Romanian, it was together with European organizations and with other friends and other partners for our productions. sharing the protocols that were in place from US to Europe, from north to south, and try to pick whatever we can from there. For me personally, it was a big help. Everything that we had in the brainstorming in ACE or in EVA network, where everyone was sharing what's going on in its own country. And then the moment that we understood that we will get no support from the Romanian authorities in terms of money or means, our only request from that point and what we were pushing was to have the shooting allowed and to help out the authorities to implement measures that will really allow the shootings to go on. Because if they would have put some regulations that were saying, yes, you are allowed, but only 2 actors and only 2 hours per day, and I don't know what other restrictions by their mind, and with only 10 people in the crew, this was obvious that would have not worked. So we tried to get the best things that are covering us in terms of protection, but things that are also functional for a shooting crew. And luckily, or thanks to all these efforts that we put together, consulting also with health specialists, and not only with our part of the world, I mean the industry, the sector. So we managed to achieve this quite early, and we were allowed to shoot from the 1st of June 2020, and that's what we did. And actually, how we implement the measures in the end, they were quite permissive, but most of us we were implementing each production a specific protocol that most of the time it was more restrictive than what the law was telling us. And of course, last year was more complicated than this year, also because of the fact that last year we didn't know much, we didn't have a vaccine. Now, for instance, for this big production that we are carrying, actually on the basis of the same rules like last year, the difference, especially psychologically, is that the massive majority of the crew and cast are vaccinated. So this diminish the risk very seriously. We didn't have even not a single suspicion of COVID presence in our crew. And also I'm very, very grateful to all the technicians and the artists that we were working with, because everyone was really very cautious and very respectful towards the others. Because we restricted, even during the shooting, we couldn't impose people not to go out of their household during the production and so, but we asked them not to participate in public events or in risky agglomerated events or situations. And they did their best, and most of them really took it very seriously, like even canceling events where they should have been present during the production in their free time, but they didn't attend it, just to make sure that they protect themselves.
Amazing. And I think that if one thinks about a protocol created for the industry, by the industry, is kind of like a dream in a way, because it's taking into consideration the details that we know, like devil is in the details in our jobs. And while you were talking, I was thinking about the UK, which is kind of the opposite scenario. We have an extremely restricted and you know, lots of rules, lots of ideas created by people who don't necessarily work in the industry, which is the government in this case. How did you, both things, how did you experience this, Elizabeth, in the UK? And also, how can you interact this thought with what Ada was saying?
I would say actually the opposite. We experienced the opposite from ADA in some respects, not all, but not for the reasons that you have highlighted. We made a film in 2020, which was Mothering Sunday, and we made a film in 2021, which is in post-production at the moment, called Living. And with Mothering Sunday, I don't know, I just had this sense that we were going to come out of lockdown in the late summer, early autumn, because I just had a feeling that they were going to have to let everyone out. It had been so long, and that outdoors, generally viruses wouldn't transmit as readily as they would indoors, just from my basic school, university biology. So what really did it for us is we were very fortunate to have a script that was purely by accident. Alice Birch had done an adaptation, kind of COVID, ticked COVID boxes, in that it was a small cast. It took place just outside of London. We didn't have to travel people everywhere. It had all of the practical aspects attached to it that would make it possible to film during COVID. The two things we needed was for lockdown to end, which it did for the film industry, we were allowed to shoot, and also for the government to underwrite the COVID insurance, because none of the insurance companies were doing that. The other things that were amazing for us was because nothing was filming, we were able to attach really high level talent to the project because people wanted to work. So, you know, we managed to get Olivia Colman and Colin Firth and Josh O'Connor, obviously Odessa's up and coming. So we sort of had this film that we thought we could make as long as we could get insurance and as long as the country opened up for the film industry, which it did. We had to follow Public Health England guidelines in order for the insurance to be in place and in order to make sure that if there was a claim, we would be able to make it. And those guidelines were very specific. And although it was very, very stressful for me, I wanted to ensure the well-being of the crew, of the cast, and also the wider populace that we would be interacting with. And that was stressful. And you didn't know if at any moment you would have to shut down, and it was pre-vaccination. But we all put our heads down, and also we were able to say to the crew, as Ada was saying, please, can you refrain from going out? But actually, there was nowhere to go to because nothing was really open. So we did get through, and I think we did have one positive case on the second to last day of filming, a runner who worked at Unit Base, and we immediately did rapid testing, and it was contained and didn't spread anywhere else. So we were absolutely fine. And when we came out of filming, it was only then that I sort of realized, like, gosh, that was quite stressful and very, very exhausting. The wonderful thing, you know, like the recognition of Ada's film, is we then got into Cannes and we got incredible reviews, and the film gets released this November 19th in the States and in the UK just prior. But actually what I am going to say is when we shot Living, it was very, very challenging, despite vast percentage of the population being vaccinated. And as Ada said, then people were not exposed in a very dangerous way. Is what happened is the whole industry opened up, society basically opened up, and the Delta variant arrived. So the things with filming opening up in London is everyone is here, and the increased platforms. So you've got Netflix, you've got Amazon, you've got HBO, you've got the studios, everyone is shooting, and we just do not have, plus Brexit, we don't have enough facilities, we don't have enough crew to service the demand for productions. So you literally, we were at one point on Living, we had no first AD and we had no key grip because no one was available. Just before filming, we didn't even know if we were going to have lights to shoot the production. I mean, it was literally grabbing lights from here, from there, wherever you could. The challenges were massive. Plus, people were being pinged all the time because the Delta variant was spreading like wildfire through the young. And although they weren't getting, well, our experience, very few young people get seriously ill unless there's comorbidity issues. They had to isolate. So people were being pinged all the time, productions were being, we were lucky we didn't shut down on Living, but it was incredibly challenging because you couldn't get the crew. In the old days, we would have flown, you know, a second AC in from Rome, or so if we could find a key grip in I don't know, Romania, we can't do that anymore. So it's been very, very challenging. And I know of 2 productions that just haven't been able to film. They've just said, we're not filming this year because they literally cannot get the crew. And then you've got a problem of having people who are incredibly inexperienced working in positions that they haven't yet had the training for. So it's something that the industry and the government is addressing, but whether they can address it quickly enough, I don't know. And if you're a studio film, what was happening, and I understand why, but it really made the independents suffer, is they're basically block booking. So cranes would be booked for 6 months, even if they weren't using them, because there are not enough. So it's a whole different set of challenges we have, because it's a massive industry here. Amazing cast, amazing crew, fantastic tax credit. People want to be in England. They're starting to change things now in terms of being pinged, where you don't have to isolate. So that's changed things enormously. But the lack of facilities and crew is a huge problem for the industry, which is going to take years to solve. And you saw with the announcement that Lord of the Rings is moving here.
Absolutely, and we all panicked. And for those who are not familiar with this idea of pinging, which we call it the pingdemic in the UK, is basically we had an app that was called Track and Trace. So if you had one person with a positive case, that person will be pinged, but also the people who had been in touch with that person in the last 2, 3, 4 days will be also pinged. I don't remember the amount of days, but it's a certain amount of days. They will also be pinged, and everybody will be requested to self-isolate for 10 days.
Yeah.
And that made productions really challenging.
Yeah,
in that way. That's all the other things that you were mentioning, which are really...
They were all shutting down left, right, and center. So it's really weird. I realized in retrospect when we made Mothering Sunday that actually it was a sort of golden time because no one else was filming and the pubs and the restaurants weren't open. So I took a load of photographs I was traveling on public transport just because I was really interested in this moment of history of what was happening. And I would be like the only person on the train. Whereas when we made Living, everyone was out and about and everyone was filming.
Yeah. Adis, when you are listening both to Ada and to Elizabeth, how do you relate with your situation in Bosnia and what happened to you while you were filming? You shot 3 films during the pandemic. Is that right?
Yeah, I did one we did one in November last year, and then one in May and one that I just finished right now in August. I can obviously relate more to Ada because our country is also our authorities aren't really responsible, and we basically when the pandemic started, everyone was avoiding responsibility, and then they weren't doing anything to really support people, not just film industry, but like everyone in general. They were doing nothing to battle the crisis, really. So it was we were basically left to our own devices. I did the film that I did in November, which was with Aida Begic. We were supposed to shoot in April last year, and we have obviously had to postpone because of the lockdown. And it turns out we postponed for November, which was actually when we had the worst breakout in Bosnia. So it would have been better for us to film in April because there was almost no cases at the time than in November. But like the same as in Romania, we had to basically make our own rules. There was no one really who could tell us, this is, you can do this, you cannot do this. We were even contacting the authorities, the Ministry of Health, and we wouldn't get a clear answer because no one was ready to say anything on the record, to say, you can have 10 people, you can have 20 people, you cannot have any people, you cannot film. So no one was really, and this was really frustrating, because we film people, we like to follow rules, we like to, because we plan everything meticulously, we like to have rules, So basically, in the end, we just sat down, this association of filmmakers, and we made some kind of a protocols that we would follow, and also something that was realistic for our country and for the budgets that we have, because we cannot do full testing of the whole crew all the time, and we don't have the resources for that. So we somehow, like for the film in November, it was quite stressful, as Elizabeth said, and later on you fully realize how stressful.
Yeah.
Because everyone was really frightened. It was the first film that was done, since the pandemic started. All of the crew was really scared. Our country wasn't doing anything. There were no vaccines. There was no plans for vaccines. We didn't even have, very massive public testing facilities. Like drive-in testing was introduced only this year in February. So it was very stressful. And yeah, but we basically used common sense, and everyone was really, the production itself was, like Elizabeth said, suited more for the conditions, because it was not a huge cast. We didn't have a lot of extras, so it was mostly, we maybe had like 5 scenes with more than 4 actors in the scene. So that was really helpful. And all of the crew was, because I guess, because they were scared themselves, we're really keeping to the restrictions, to masks, double masks. It was so in that sense we were really careful. But we did have an actor that got infected, and we had to stop for 2 weeks. We had, in the end, 4 people in the crew who got sick. But fortunately, that was it. We stopped for 2 weeks. No one had any serious symptoms, or it wasn't serious cases, so we were able to continue, and we just had like 5 days left to finish, and we finished. And then it hits you how stressful it was. And then this year, the both films that we did this year, it was less stressful, because gradually people started getting vaccinated. Most of the Bosnians get vaccinated in Serbia, because we still don't have, I think maybe like in the last 2 weeks, we have a proper vaccination effort from the country, from the state. So most of the people from February on got vaccinated in Serbia, because they were allowing it. So already in May, when we were filming the Danestan, which opened the festival this year, already like half of the crew was vaccinated. We were able to get rapid tests, which we weren't able to get before. So we were testing the crew twice a week. It was already like nicer weather. People could hang outside. The set, we didn't have a lot of interior sets, so people were able to hang outside, be spread out. Everyone was feeling a lot safer. And then this last one that I did was on location in the mountains. So we were almost like in a bubble, because it's a location which is like half an hour from Sarajevo, in the mountains. There was no one there basically other than us, and that was super relaxed. It was like a old times, almost like a vacation in the mountains. A lot of air, a very big area where people can spread out. So we were only really enforcing the full restrictions in transport, in makeup, in costume, but on the location itself, because it's so spread out and everyone is outside, it wasn't so stressful. So that helped a lot.
Thank you, Aris. When you were talking, I also thought about how much this pandemic really highlighted the inequalities that we have across Europe. Of course, with the UK being part of Europe, even though not part of the EU. And I think this also applies to our industry. You are all very you know, experienced producers and able to push through, mainly as well because of your experience. And I was thinking, what is it that we can, if we were to tell something that you have learned to newer producers, to producers that are trying in this past couple of years to become producers, or they're shooting their first film, second films, what is the one thing that you would like to spread as a knowledge of this pandemic and working in the pandemic? Ada, what would be your main advice?
Well, you know, it's I was thinking also while Elizabeth was talking about the new challenge that we are facing in 21, this of lack of crews. This is happening in Europe as well. It's hard to find a driver because everyone is shooting now. And we are flying out an assistant makeup to Croatia and bringing in a sound boom from I don't know, from Bulgaria and this and that, and there is no availabilities. And I think that for last year and for this year, and I think it will continue, the main word is solidarity. And I think that that only by sharing and caring we can break through this. But it's not only in the film business, it's in the society, I think. Sharing and caring, it's the way to go farther. And the knowledge that you get as a producer, you spread it towards the other colleagues. It's not that you have the monopoly and this and that. It's just like, hey, I went through this was my failure, take care, don't do this. Or this is how we managed to get out of it. Because again, the difference in cultures, we didn't have any kind of insurance, so it was everything on us. But in the same time, no resources, as Adis was mentioning, to have a certain amount of testing. Maybe even if probably they were more available than in Bosnia, they were too expensive for the level of our production. So we adapt. Yeah, it's sharing, caring, adapting to the conditions. How to do it? That's how the masks were appearing in Bad Luck Banging. The whole film is playing with the actors with the masks on screen that were really carefully and brilliantly, in my opinion, integrated in the flow of the film by the director. But it was just in the beginning just a matter of protection, making sure that even if we are outside, even if we have 28 actors simultaneously on set for 10 days at a certain distance and without real interaction, but still to make sure that they are protected. So this kind of little things and how to make them, I think this should be the in the back mind of any producer, of dare to ask your colleagues that were there, please share with the others, because you don't know when this good that you are doing to others will come back to you from others.
Elizabeth, that's beautiful. Thank you, Ada. Elizabeth, what would it be the golden sharing that you could do with us about your knowledge on the pandemic?
I would say it's twofold. I think that certainly speaking for the UK, the level of production is unprecedented. It's never been seen before at the levels it is now for film and television. And there is plenty of work. And for many, many people, it's very well paid. And I think that actually the film industry, which is supported in the way that it is and supported by the government, it's such a massive boom industry and such an important industry for the government, and we have access to vaccinations here, is that really the biggest correlation with COVID is socioeconomic, and that problem we need to solve with our vote and activism, really. And I would say that exists there. We are privileged in our industry, very privileged. But I would say that what we have seen with COVID are two things: a massive rise in very evident problems with the environment, exacerbated by the way the film industry currently conducts itself. And I think that for me, we really need a drive in the industry. COVID has just made plastic consumption go through the roof. And we use diesel, we use generators, we use lights. I really think that the industry needs to come together and figure out how it can use its muscle and its power, which is now a global muscle and power, to see how those things can be addressed.
So sustainability,
yeah,
as a big part of the conversation.
I think that's really important because, you know, so many young people are coming into the industry now, and in the UK, certainly we need to desperately train those young people to come into the industry. And it's those young people who are bearing the brunt of, as well as, you know, socioeconomic people living in conditions of the climate crisis. And I do think that the film industry, as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger across the world, it's a huge global employer. And it hasn't even really got started in some countries, you know, like on the African continent. I think it's just going to explode once the streamers establish themselves there and once production establishes itself there. And I think if we can be ahead of the game with solar energy and you know, trying to offset travel and all of those things, because production's a big consumer, not just in the way that it consumes materials, set construction, costume construction, flying people left, right and center, petrol, but also its footprint in many cases. So I do think it would be great to try and come together and address that. But I'm speaking for the UK, where 75% of the people are vaccinated and we're mask wearing, and most people on film sets aren't working with comorbidity issues. And, you know, I think that's controllable. I don't know what variants are around the corner, but yeah, anyway, that's what I would say.
Thank you. And Adis, what is your golden nugget of advice in terms of what you've learned?
Well, I mean, you know, basically, I mean, what Ada said, you know, and what I see, but, you know, sometimes, like, I don't know why, but, you know, people are afraid to, you know, or they don't want to ask, you know, for advice, or, you know, or they think, you know, you are inapproachable or something, you know, and that's you know, I always say to anyone, you know, the doors are always open. You know, you can come in and ask whatever you want, and I think people shouldn't be afraid to, you know, learn from other people's mistakes and success stories as well. You know, it just I think, you know, people should really you know, in this industry, because it's a small community anyways, you know, you really should use the knowledge of colleagues to get through these times. And you know, film industry is adaptable, and I think, you know, we can be in a way also an example for other industries, because we always, you know, we need to adapt to a lot of things, or we've always needed to adapt to a lot of things, and this is just one new and extra thing that we have to adapt to. So and that's you know, that for me it was really normal to kind of, you know, okay, you know, it's not normal, it's the pandemic, but it's normal to enforce certain kind of rules, because we always, you know, in different productions we enforce different kind of rules on the set, and it was just, and the crew is very, you know, they're like soldiers. They're like, you know, you tell them, okay, you have to behave like this, and, you know, as long as you feed them and you know, and you follow the, you know, the working hours, they're okay with everything, and you know, they're all really colleagues, and they want to help, and, you know, if so in that sense, I think it's just, you know, camaraderie. You know, you just have to talk to people and you know, be, like Ada said, you know, solidarity is the key principle here.
So strength and unity.
Exactly.
Absolutely, and of course knowledge transfer and sustainability. And one wonders if those crews will ever allow you to feed them vegan catering if we talk about sustainability.
Actually, we were really, because
you know, actually, if we're talking about sustainability, you can save a lot of carbon footprint with vegan catering that you cannot even save with transport and diesel. So one vegan catering will actually lower your footprint a lot. So I think that's the taboo frontier these days for
I mean, this, you know, like Elizabeth said, this, you know, this single serving packaging, you know, that, you know, we had to, you know, do at some point, and all the plastic cups, and, you know, you know, it's at the same time, you cannot afford to, you know, buy paper cups because they are incredibly expensive, you know, which is also, you know, very, very bizarre, you know, but I guess the plastic industry is driving that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's true, you know, this
a combination.
This has really increased the, you know, the amount of waste we are creating. So yeah, I agree with Elizabeth. We need to think of other ways to do it.
And I think that you just tapped into another maybe important topic that relates to the pandemics, which is the increase in budget that will mean having to deal with this pandemic in the right way. Elizabeth, how did you guys manage to, or what kind of increase did you see in your budget because you were handling the pandemics? Can you tell us a bit more about that aspect of filming during the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had a 6-figure budget increase, which was related to testing. So we were testing twice a week, and then for PPE. So it certainly was a lot to bear, but fortunately for us, as we gave that figure to the financiers, and 2 of them were able to split the cost of that. And then we did bring the film in slightly under budget. So we were then able to put the leftover contingency towards that cost. That was the main. But again, if you're the streamers or the studios have much higher figures, because you know, we're set up as an independent, and so it's not as driven by a kind of legislative system. There's so much that's attached to working for a larger corporation where you're having to satisfy the threat of a lawsuit, I kind of think is what it comes down to. And so the costs and the PPE demands, and I mean, just like with the difference between an independent and a studio. I mean, independents work in a much more streamlined fashion. And so we budgeted in a more streamlined fashion. Obviously, safety was the priority, and that's what we focused on, but we didn't have to go to areas of excess that you might witness outside an independent structure. Not saying that that's wrong, I'm just saying it's a different setup.
No, of course. And Ada, what was your experience in terms of how COVID impacted your budget? Do you have anything to share with us about that?
Well, actually, it was somewhere around 5% of the budget. The budget of Bad Luck Banging was around 900,000. So, but it was absorbed somehow into the budget because we couldn't afford it. So it's at the end of the day, we ended up with something like even less, like, I don't know, like 3% of the budget that we went over budget. But it's not only this, it's also the complexity of the film and other issues. So I didn't count it really carefully. But for instance, in terms of adapting, because that were the money and that were the conditions, and everyone wanted to shoot and they were very willing to shoot and to feel themselves alive. I had one actor that she was telling me, you don't know what it means for me to be on set. It's not that I don't fear the disease, but I feel alive. Yeah. Because with the theaters being locked, with my life, that it's the public presence, I'm an actor. It's really something that means a lot for me, and I'm here and I'm working and I feel alive. That was one thing. But the other thing that I wanted to mention in terms of adaptation is speaking about lunch break and these boxes and, you know, the demands for catering, like we need to have 3 courses and 3 variety of meat and 7 varieties of salads and this and that. And we said for Bad Luck Banging, we said, sorry, for this film, we are okay if you want to raise your salary with a amount of catering and you bring your own catering, or else we are providing only couple of types of big sandwiches with vegetables, some vegetarian, some with meat, but that's everything. So no fork and knives, no other thing, wrapped in paper, fresh, really freshly made, but that's it. That's what you are going to eat.
It's so
and fruits.
Yeah, it's so cool to hear you say that, because I really tried to push for that. I said, look, I bet you if we say to the crew, we'll increase your salary by this amount and we will provide this and you can bring something else. I think that's quite an interesting way forward, but there was too much resistance. There was just too much resistance.
Did you receive resistance from the crew?
I just think we were so early to shoot. We were the first independent film, or the first one to start from ground zero up. And I think there were too many unknowns. I mean, as it was, I just said, forget about the tea trolley coming round, give everyone a task and they can bring in their own tea and coffee. But I do think it's interesting to hear Ada say that, because I feel like there is a whole space to explore around that area. I mean, I know people work really long hours, but I kind of think that just to do with COVID and also to do with waste, that there's another way of looking at this. And it's great to hear that you have already spearheaded that and pushed back the envelope in terms of catering and supply.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Adis, what is your experience in terms of these tweaks around catering and stuff like that? Because a lot of people during lockdown as well, I think, started thinking about what they eat, how they eat, people changing their diet. So this is not completely strange to our industry. We have all these requirements many times, like Ada was saying, right?
Yeah, but you know how it is with with the crew. Everyone likes to eat a different thing, and you cannot get them to agree on anything. Someone wants a lot of meat, someone doesn't want any meat. It always comes down to food. All the complaints always come down to catering and craft, and why we don't have an espresso machine. And it's and like Elizabeth said, it's really long hours, and sometimes it annoys you that people request these things, but then you realize they're working 12, sometimes makeup crew works 14 hours, and you have to appreciate that it's really long hours. And I mean, I do agree that we need to figure out a way how to make all this waste creation to solve this issue. But I don't know if you can like really offer to everyone to make their own food at home, if they're working for 14 hours. And especially if you like for this film that we just did in the mountains, we're on location. There's no store, there's no restaurants, there's nothing, and then you really have to provide for the crew. But yeah, definitely, a lot of plastic is consumed, and we try, like for water, we like decided to buy a bottle for everyone, so they wouldn't use cups. Mm-hmm. And this was but we still ended up using a lot of cups for, I don't know, coffee or whatever. You solve the water, but then you have coffee as well, or tea, or it's definitely there is a lot of waste, and then something needs to change, and hopefully
it's a system that we still require to continue on thinking and improving it. Yes. At that point.
Yes.
And now that you know all these things, if you were to go back, what is it that you would do differently from what happened, from what you did? What is it that you would do differently? And also, I would like to also ask you, what was the biggest fear beyond, of course, getting COVID in terms of your films, right? Who wants to go first?
Well, I mean, I can say like that really, like what I difference from 2020 and this year is that we were able to have these rapid tests available, and that really helped, because we were testing everyone 2 or even 3 times a week, and then it really helps all the crew to feel relaxed, and then like in November when we were filming, a lot of people were really frightened, and that really creates a lot of stress on the set, especially like people. I mean, you know, the actors are of course most exposed, but like people in costume and makeup as well. And it was really stressful for them at you know, especially if you're working in close quarters. So yeah, the rapid tests are really, really useful. And, you know,
so if you had to go back, you will get the rapid tests.
For
that
sure.
would be your change.
And you know, you know, it's almost like, I wouldn't say it's a placebo effect, but you know, it helps the crew to relax and that feel that everyone's gone through the testing, and you know, we are okay at least for a couple of days, and then we test again, and
yeah,
it really helps people relax. And then on the last two shoots, we didn't have any cases of anyone getting infected.
But
yeah.
Sorry, Addis.
No, I'm just saying, and you were asking what was I afraid of? You know, I was you know, I wasn't so concerned about the money and, you know, going over the schedule. I was more afraid that, you know, one of the colleagues would, you know, get sick seriously. And, you know, you are responsible for these people. You, of course, you didn't make anyone work, but you still put them in this environment where they are exposed. So that's more concern for, you know, someone getting seriously ill than, you know, us spending money that we don't have.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, what you would do differently if you would go back, and what was the biggest fear, if there was anything beyond that?
I think the biggest fear was people's well-being. Like I said, it was the immediate, you know, the safety of the family, we call them, of the cast and crew, and then also the wider public. That was the biggest concern. And then the fear of having to shut down and just how that would work, how that would be managed. More because I just thought, oh my God, it would be such a headache to have to rework everything. So that was a fear. In terms of what we would do differently, and I don't intend this to sound arrogant at all, but I think we had such a phenomenal crew and cast, and they really were impeccable. I could not fault them. They were so professional and so sharing and caring, and also highly talented and creative. I think the one thing that I would do differently, but then we didn't know then what we know now, hindsight is a wonderful thing. We did the first 2 weeks of pre-production, hard pre-production remotely. And I don't think that you can really do hard pre-production remotely. That was pretty challenging, like coming in to the production office only 6 weeks before filming on a period film of the level that Mothering Sunday was at. That was, yeah, there were a few sleepless nights there.
Yeah.
But you know, at the time we thought that's what we had to do. We thought that production offices were going to be super spreader places, and we were trying to mitigate that. So and Zoom is very, you know, like you're on Zoom and all the production people are on Zoom and you're like, oh, this is cool. And you're working from home, and it creates this false sense of security.
Yeah.
And then you get in there and you're like, oh, whoa, wait a second.
Something happened here. And Ada, what would be your, the thing you would do differently if you go back, and what was your biggest fear?
Well, the fear was, yeah, this concern generated by the responsibility that I'm carrying on my shoulders. Not necessarily that I'm getting or my dear ones are getting sick, but the fact that I will be involved in the situation that someone infected someone.
Yeah.
And it's my responsibility. This gave me the sleepless nights. And so then in terms of working at distance, I don't have a problem. And I think that this is also an achievement, how we managed to do so much online. What I would do differently, it's just for the rehearsing period of Bad Luck Banging, that was only online.
Yeah.
And I think that I would do it differently now. So I would generate somehow a big space where they can be together and exchange directly energies and thoughts and stuff. But still, my biggest fear today, and please don't interpret this in any bad way or arrogant, like an arrogant attitude. I'm wondering what quantity of waste we are carrying in the overall production of content. And I'm thinking over and over again that we are living in a period of overproduction of films of any kind. And this is starting, of course, with me and asking myself, do I do something that is relevant? Am I wasting people's money, energy, life, dreams in something that is really relevant and will really break through? Or am I just doing, you know, like a machine, a process that will give me 2 weeks of pleasure and fulfillment and the money to pay the rent for another couple of months, and that's it. So picking up and sorting out the waste out of what we are doing, it's on every single level, from creative to the to wrapping a fruit in plastic. I think these are my biggest concerns nowadays, and they were already in the last period.
Yeah, that's so articulate the way you phrase that, but I think we've seen that COVID has just accelerated changes that were already seeding themselves in the industry in a massive, massive way. And probably where that will lead is a whole other screen link, but it's a really fascinating conversation. But I remember I said a few years ago, I thought if they introduce UBI, which I think capitalist systems just aren't going to have any choice but introduce UBI, we're going to be in a world where you either pay to watch stories or you get paid to make stories. Because it's a huge industry and it is just a machine that is rolling. It's interesting, which is a very different space to the one that those of us of my age anyway came into when we first started working. Not saying it's wrong or it's bad, but it's a very, very different space.
It's very different.
There will be seismic shifts ahead.
Yeah, and the audience are asking a question. There's somebody asking a question in the audience that actually taps into this. You know, how has the industry been changed for the future, and are there ways of working that will actually be consigned to history from what we've done? You know, the questions around the amount of content that we produce, the questions around sustainability, remote working. Is there any, I think we tapped into all those bits, but is there anything that you think we're missing from the question on the audience that we can add? What has changed and it will remain changed, and what will not be done like it was before? Like the idea of, right, going back to normal that we've been talking about so much. What do you feel has changed forever?
Oof, it's still too early to say what will be history in a couple of years. I mean, it's a process. I mean, it's not really like this. I mean, the ways, the new way and the old way will still coexist for quite some time, I think. Probably shorter than we imagine at this point. But I cannot figure out something that will be history next year.
It's like film and digital.
Yeah.
I do think that on the publicity side for release, I think that just before COVID hit, you know, people were being flown all over the world to do Q&As in the awards season. It had just reached such a frenzied pitch where it was like kind of national lampoons. If it's Monday, it must be Shanghai. And if it's Tuesday, it must be Sydney, and Wednesday. I mean, it was just insane. And I do think that the possibilities that technology has presented in terms of access, and, you know, it's hard for actors to be, and I'm not crying, but, you know, you're on a plane endlessly and it's this big machine, publicity machine. And I think that both the access that festivals have by able to do a combined physical and online version is fantastic, because those festivals can reach many, many more people around the world. And also, you know, people who live in faraway places aren't having to fly in on markets like the virtual Cannes market. That's how we set up Mothering Sunday, was amazingly successful. That was unheard of pre-COVID. and also that people can do Q&As virtually instead of having to fly everywhere. I think that those are really positive things that have come out of COVID, actually, that were forced by COVID. So those are the upsides of the downside.
Yeah, and I think like probably things will change more on the distribution side than on the production side. You know, the release will be quite different, and you know, I think the cinemas will suffer more than, you know, the production side.
Absolutely. Well, I think that we are done with time. Thanks for the questions from the audience. I don't see any other question at the moment. If there's any last one, talk now or it will be done. I really want to thank you all for coming to share with us all these experiences that are super important. As
Frozen
Paula.
Maybe that'll be the change. Zoom will be more sophisticated. We won't freeze anymore.
Yes.
So freezing will be consigned to history.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Well, God, I feel like I want to come and visit you both.
Yeah, as Ada said, I think next.
Paula, you are back.
Oh,
Finally.
amazing.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
at the end, I got kicked out. Well, I was thanking you all. She's back. Thank you. I don't know what happened there. I was thanking you all for being with us, and to the audience for the questions. And today, later today, there is another panel about working with streamers and what are we doing in terms of the content and producing, etc. So all these conversations and all these topics are continuing. Once again, thank you to the panelists, Ada, Elizabeth. Adi, it's such a pleasure, such an honor to have you.
Paula, it was a pleasure.
And for sharing all your information, and to Sarajevo as well, and to everybody that asked questions. If I missed any of your questions, I'm sorry. I think I got the questions that I saw. Next panel is at 5 p.m. UK time, 6 p.m. Central Europe time. So I hope to see you all there. Until then, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Good luck.
Bye. Thank you.